So today's session is on equitable math instruction with assessments. I'm excited to present on this topic because it's one that's near and dear to my heart and something that mattered a great deal to me as I was serving students when I was a public school teacher in Norfolk, Virginia and Washington, D.C. And I'm happy to sort of bring my passion and focus on this topic to you as well and have some teachers share their thoughts on the topic. Just a note on today's session, those who join us will receive a follow-up email with a copy of this slide deck and the video recording so that you can check those out asynchronously at your convenience for reference. And a few notes on webinar etiquette and Zoom basics. Please leave your microphone on mute. There may be some key moments where we ask people to share, but in general, keep those on mute. The video control, you can feel free to share your video if you're comfortable, or you can leave that off, but we would love to see you. And then feel free to use the chat feature in the bottom center of your Zoom screen. My name is Brian Story, and I'm the Director of Teacher Engagement at ASSISTments, and I'll be facilitating today. So again, happy to join you and bring my passion for this topic to the table in support of your creating more equitable classrooms for your students. Just a note on audience, today's webinar assumes some basic knowledge of assessments, including how to create an account, how to find and assign problems to your students, and how to interpret and analyze data in the assignment report. I've linked to those resources here, some resources on those topics here, as well as our webinar recordings for our new user parts 1 and 2 sessions, if you're interested in learning more about some of the basics of assessments. So I wanted to start just by giving folks a chance to share in the chat, and I appreciate anybody willing to share their thoughts. What do you think is your greatest challenge in trying to create an equitable class environment for all students? And this, if you're current teachers, this could be about your current experience. If you're a former teacher, feel free to share from your experience teaching in the past, and I'd love to hear from you. Awesome, thanks, Bridget. So Bridget shares that many of her students do not have a multitude of background experiences to draw on to connect past learning to new ideas. So that's definitely something that can be a struggle for teachers. Kathy shares that it's a challenge having every student's voice heard and making sure that there are different ways for students to share their thinking. Mary Beth shared that it can be a challenge to differentiate instruction for all learners so that everyone can access the material. These are real struggles in teachers' classrooms, and we have to develop concrete strategies to address them. Hopefully, once we get through this session today, you'll have some valuable insights on how you can use assessments to support equity as well. And thanks, Lee. So fostering a culture of constructive dialogue in the classroom, also a huge challenge that teachers are trying to grapple with. So our goal in today's session is to spotlight how experienced assessments teachers use our platform to support an equitable classroom environment. To meet that goal, we're going to spend some time just doing a quick overview of equity. We'll dive into our featured teacher presenters, have some time for Q&A with the presenters, and share some guidance from assessments as well before we wrap up. So what do we mean by equity? There are different definitions for equity, depending on which organization you're looking at. So we just want to center on our definition, how we think about equity. And so educational equity means that each child receives what they need to develop to their full academic and social potential. And so that means that you as the teacher are trying to ensure high quality or high outcomes for all participants in your classroom, and removing that predictability of success and failure that currently correlates with social and cultural factors in the data that we see, interrupting inequitable practices. So looking at your own biases and trying to create an inclusive multicultural environment in your school and classroom. And discovering and cultivating the unique gifts, talents, and interests of all of the human beings, the little human beings in your classroom, the students. So I want to just do a quick pulse check here, and I'm going to launch a poll just to kind of get a feel for where everybody is on the topic of equity in your own context. So give me just a second to launch that. All right, so we'll give folks about 60 seconds or so to respond to the poll. All right, so let's take a look at the results. So it looks like folks are kind of all over the place in their experience with, talking about discussing and implementing equity in their classrooms. It looks like the most common answer, so more than half of those present today, said they've discussed equity, but have not developed specific action steps to support it. And then a few folks also shared that they've discussed and developed specific strategies. Only about 10% of those here today said they've implemented strategies and seen positive student outcomes as a result. So this is definitely a topic where we're in need of kind of moving from how much we care about it and the sort of theoretical realm of what equity means, and getting into the concrete practices that are really going to make sure we're serving all of our students. All right, so why this topic? I've talked a bit about this already, but you as teachers, you're not only tackling the issues around learning loss from COVID, you're also confronting systemic inequalities that impact students and have impacted students way before COVID. And that also includes, the varying levels of knowledge they enter the classroom with and their mindsets around learning. And so we at ASSISTments are dedicated to supporting equitable opportunities for students to improve math learning, no matter who they are, what their background is, what they may have thought about math coming into your classrooms. We are here to support your work, to support them. One thing that we've done to support teachers using ASSISTments in equitable ways is creating this teacher guide for equity with ASSISTments. And so this includes both equity practices that are research-based, and for each one of those equity practices, guidance for ASSISTments teachers on each practice based on the resources and recommendations that we have to offer. And so what I'm going to do is just share a link to this in the chat. And if you would, just go ahead and open that up. We're going to spend a little bit of time taking a look at some of the practices and guidance that we offer in today's session. So what we're going to do is some small group breakouts. Each group is going to focus on one equity practice and the guidance we provide for ASSISTments teachers. Your breakout group title will tell you which practice and associated guidance to focus on, so no guesswork there. And what we want you to do, we're going to spend 5 minutes total. First, take 2 minutes just to read the specific practice and our associated guidance, and then take the final 3 minutes just to take turns to share notice and wonder. And when you come back together, we want folks to share either in the chat or aloud what stands out to you as the highest value guidance we provide for the equity practice in question, and why. And so, and actually, sorry, I misspoke there. It would be great if each group could appoint one person to share in the chat or to share aloud, but we can also just open up the floor and allow anyone as well. So I think just for clarity's sake, you can feel free to come back and share your thoughts from the breakout, no matter who you are. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and launch breakout groups. It's going to take me just a minute to get everybody into a breakout group, so bear with me. All right, I'm going to go ahead and launch these rooms. And again, we'll have about 5 minutes. I'll leave these directions up so that you can see them. And I'll give about a 1 minute warning before we come back together. And I look forward to hearing what stands out to you. All right. So now that everybody's had a chance to sort of look at a specific practice, equity practice, and our associated guidance, I would love to have folks share. You can feel free to unmute and share aloud, or you can share in the chat. What stood out to you as the highest value guidance we provide for the equity practice, and why?
Hi, my name is Jackie Jordan, and I was in the group where we talked about leveraging. And what we discussed is that there are times when we give our kids performance tasks or constructor response questions to work on, and if it has parts, so therefore we assign each student a part.
Mm-hmm.
And what I discussed with what we discussed as a team is that there are times when let's say, for instance, we don't put all in my school, we don't put all of the smart kids in the same group.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we break them down so that we have peer tutors.
Mm-hmm.
I teach the peer tutor, and the peer tutor teach the group.
Mm-hmm.
And once they get to if you have one student that gets to a point where they don't understand exactly what they're supposed to be doing as far as that performance task is concerned, the other group members chip in and help that person out to ensure that that group gets a good grade for its project or its performance task. And we absolutely love peer tutors, because we found what our group discusses that we found throughout the education process is that kids learn better from their peers.
Mm-hmm.
And
Absolutely.
it's awesome to just see kids sit down and talk about problems in math.
Mm-hmm.
Have those mathematical discussions,
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing, Jackie. I think that's absolutely right. We can often think about how we're going to differentiate the materials in our lessons. And we sometimes it can be an afterthought to think about how can you get students talking about and discussing and math and justifying their answers and those sorts of things. And it's important to have strategies to leverage the different levels of knowledge and skills that your students have to support a classroom that works for everybody that's there. So that's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, no problem. Anybody else feel like sharing either aloud or in the chat? We welcome your thoughts. And in this case, Jackie shared a practice that came to mind from her own classroom, which is awesome. You can also feel free to share something that stood out to you from the equity framework that I shared, but appreciate anybody sharing their thoughts.
I was with the group on spaces for marginality, and we felt it was really difficult to value one higher than the other, that they all seem very valuable. 5 practices really ties in with actually the top part about looking at where students showing their progress and showing their work. And then if you dive into the blog using like my favorite no, another good way to analyze what students are doing and have them think about misconceptions or what were students thinking, even if it's not their own. So it was different. We didn't find one was above the others.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, I'm glad you found them all valuable. That's awesome. And I love that you highlighted there the importance of creating these constructive math discourses in the classroom. My favorite no is a fantastic activity to really get students to think deeply about how they're thinking. So sort of getting into some of that metacognition, and it can be super helpful to students who may, the current content may be a challenge for them. So getting into that metacognition can kind of help them to better understand, what important knowledge and skills are coming to bear for the problems they're working on. Thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate that, Kathy. All right, and I'll give a chance just to see if anybody else would like to share, either in the chat or sharing aloud. We welcome your responses. All right. Well, like I said, I appreciate those of you who are willing to share. Feel free to drop your thoughts, questions, concerns, wonderings in the chat as we continue. We definitely welcome and want to make sure that everybody has a voice to share and contribute in today's session. So now that we've kind of talked a bit about equity and one of the ways in which we support equity from ASSISTments, now we're going to kind of get into our featured presenters, which I'm super excited about because these are two very hardworking ASSISTments teachers, and it's extremely important that teachers get to share their perspectives with each other and share ideas and skills for how to create an equitable classroom environment. And so our two presenters today, and I apologize, I should say Maria Borez and Brandon Marshall. Maria is an 8th grade math teacher at Downtown Charter Academy in Oakland, California. And Brandon is a 7th and 8th grade math teacher at Center City Public Charter School in the Trinidad neighborhood in Washington, D.C. Definitely want to give a shout out to my DC teachers, whether in public or charter schools. I was a former DCPS teacher myself, so definitely glad to have Maria and Brandon with us today. Just as a note, during the presentations, you can feel free to chat any questions, wonderings, or ideas that come to mind as you listen. Feel free to @ the presenter's name as well if you'd like to direct a specific question or comment toward one of our presenters. And then I, as our chat moderator, am going to track any questions that come in, and I'll share sort of broader themes that emerge from what you share. So we will have a chance to do Q&A after the presentations, and I really appreciate y'all sharing any questions or wonderings or ideas that you have. And with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Brandon.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. My name is Brandon Marshall. As Brian said, I'm a 7th and 8th math teacher in the Trinidad area of Washington, D.C. A few things about my school. We are a small school. We have about 200 students. We are a pre-K through 8th grade academy, so our middle school is in a sector of our elementary school, which does offer a different type of environment. And we only have one class per grade. So there's 1/3, 1/4, so on and so on. With the COVID, how it impacted our campus, it did extend our school year, which increased some burnout with our scholars. However, they are still really hungry to learn. They came back hating being online and really excited being back in person. So we were able to kind of leverage that enthusiasm. I have a relatively diverse group of students. I have 24 7th graders, 22 8th graders. Both classes are inclusion with about 4 to 8 students with IEPs or special education accommodations within the space. And it is 99% African American. We have a majority African American students at our campus. My students in the fall, obviously we talked about it in our group with the COVID and the online learning and the switch, we definitely had gaps that we had to attack as soon as we walked in the building. This was their data at the beginning of the year. As you can see, my 7th graders had a little bit more in terms of students who could be at grade level and slightly above than my 8th graders, but the majority was still really suffering from learning loss. And I had to come up with some creative ways to kind of attack that. And ASSISTments was a huge help there. And that's pretty much what my data made me feel like. I talked to my team, I got to my interventionist, I tried to get everything together in my head that I could do to figure out how to attack these gaps and get my scholars where they needed to be. In my classroom, our daily routine, I use the modern classrooms model. If you're unfamiliar with that model, it's a student self-paced way of teaching the scholars. So they have videos of me and I teach them the lesson. They have guided notes that they use to go along with the lesson. Then there's some sort of practice that they can do with a partner or independently, and then an independent mastery check. And every time that they work through it, I check their practice, they get 2 attempts at their mastery check, and once they've mastered that concept, they can go on to the next lesson on their own pace. Here you see a picture of my Google Classroom, just showing kind of how ASSISTments is incorporated there. At the bottom, you see the lesson 22 practice via ASSISTments. It links directly to Google Classroom. So all I have to do is make my assignment, share it, and that's how my scholars can get a retest and do their practice with feedback. And that's what that was. The Modern Classrooms is introduced in the practice and the mastery check. This is the report that I use once they've done the mastery check that I kind of analyze to support my lesson, my groupings, and what my instruction should look like for the next day. The inclusion principle that I focused on today was leveraging multiple mathematical competencies. So I was really excited to work with Jackie and Bridget in that session so that we could talk about the different ways we get students accessing content. Even if they have different levels of knowledge, different sets of mastery skills, there's a way for them all to access grade level content. My approach with ASSISTments and the way that I use it to use those multiple entry points, I use it for partner and small group practice assignments because they can sit next to each other with the questions and work them out together. One of them often inputs the answer first, and then the next one will, like if they get it wrong and then they work through it again, then the next one will do it so that they don't all have 67%, which I think is very interesting. I also use ASSISTments as their mastery check because they're able to request a retest, and I can let them review their comments and feedback, click the delete student progress and give them that second chance. I use ASSISTments, the class report, to look for trends, things that I need to reteach, things that I notice they're doing really well in that I can leverage for the next lesson as well. I use it to plan my do nows and my review activities, and I use it to update my seating charts to reflect heterogeneous groups. So I like to mix up the skill sets based on who did well at what piece, and change my seating based on that ASSISTments report so that there's somebody to support them for every part of the problem. And that's how they work, either solo dolo or as a team. And this is the report, like I said, this is what I would use to kind of figure out where I need to make adjustments. So because this is automatically graded, as soon as they're taking it, even while they're taking it in real time, I can watch how they're getting their questions correct. From this one, I would immediately say that there's something going really well on question 1, right? Because the majority of them are getting it correct the first time. Something on part B of theirs going off. So I'm noticing that there's some people who are getting it correct eventually, but overall, there's some struggle across the board there. So I would go back and see how the question was presented, or maybe it was a tech thing, the way that they were typing in the answer. If it's a skill I need to review, I can pull all of that from looking at the ASSISTments report. And this is an example of the seating chart. So after I look at it, I make my groups, all those little shapes are my desks. And then you'll see my table, my interventionists table. And I say daily seating chart because I literally move their names every day based on whatever we've done the day before and how they've progressed through that lesson, through those skills. I keep students who need direct instruction at one of our tables so that they can pull up their ASSISTments. I can have my whiteboard and we can work through it together. Or I have the ASSISTments printed at one of these tables with the teacher, because some of my scholars, again, I have inclusion, some scholars struggle with writing, some scholars struggle with typing, but they can do it all on the printed paper, and ASSISTments lets them take pictures of the work and upload it that way. So again, anybody is able to access, my apologies, anybody is able to access the assignment regardless of what their level is. I believe these are the pictures. Okay, yes. On the slide after this, you're going to see some pictures of my scholars offering peer-to-peer support. They start off doing that helpless hand raiser as soon as they see the question. I don't get it, I need help, somebody come and help me. So I employ the Ask 3 Before Me, and I did have to teach them what that peer-to-peer support looked like. For the first time that we rolled it out, I noticed that people were just bringing their work. Like, oh, you don't know how to do it? Look at mine. Copy it down. And I realized that they weren't getting anything from that. What I wanted was to hear a mathematical discourse between the scholars that had the skill and the scholars that were still learning it. So we gave them sentence starters and had them practice the conversations with very simple mathematics. So I would put up like 3 + 4 = 8. and have students stand and tell me, I want you to use the first sentence starter. I see that you did 8 for your answer when you were solving. Why did you make that choice? Or practicing giving that type of support. After a few weeks, you start hearing them in the classroom going to each other and having much deeper conversation with guided questions. It's like having mini me's all over the place where they're forcing each other to think about it rather than just go for the answer. And here are some pictures of it in practice. The students on the desks are using their desks as their scratch paper, because I try my best to do a paperless math classroom as often as I can. So they're using their desks as scratch paper. Their laptops are on the separate table. So they'll work it all out and then they'll go in and put their answers. At the board, at the bottom there, the problem is actually up on the projector. And those students decided to work together to try to work that out. They're actually in the middle of doing line by line. So they're comparing each line as they go to see where they start to do something different. And then the other two, where you see groups of students and their laptops, that's where you see the direct peer-to-peer support. So there's a lead student in each of those groups in the white hoodie and then standing up in the red shirt. And they're asking them those questions and checking their work as they go along. Using assessments in this way in my classroom and teaching them that type of peer-to-peer support, checking in on the amazing reports every day to get that quick data, I've started to see an increase in perseverance with my kids. They're willing to think through something and try it again. They're starting to analyze their own mistakes because they hate when they get that first thing wrong and it moves to 67% or it moves to 33%. They really are trying to take their time and make sure they have it correct first. They're learning to ask pointed questions rather than just saying, I don't get it or I need help. They're starting to be very specific. Like, I did these 3 things and I got this and I don't know why this part is wrong. And that's a teacher's dream, to have that type of conversation. And it's created a lot of community. They support each other without judging each other. There's not the smart kids or the low kids. They're all just trying to make sure everybody gets it. And that's it.
Thank you so much, Brandon, for sharing a little bit about your classroom and what you do to make sure that every student's needs are met equitably in your classroom. Again, I'll invite attendees to share any questions, wonderings, or ideas in the chat, and we will come back to those during the Q&A section after the presentations are over. And with that, we're going to go on to Maria.
Hi, good evening. So I'm Maria Borges. I teach in Oakland and Downtown Charter Academy. So we're a Title I school, and we were one of the California Distinguished School from last year. We're very proud of that. So this picture right here is like, maybe this is 2/3 of the population. So after or because of the pandemic, we have better technology use, I would say, because we started to have 1-to-1 ratio for Chromebook to student. The internet got better. They upgraded it so that we can use all this Desmos assessments all at the same time. And you can see students are eager to learn and they are very excited to socialize. So I kind of capitalize on that excitement to socialize. And I will discuss it later. I will talk about more of that later. So this is my class profile. I have 102 students in 8th grade. Majority of them, or 81% of them, are Asian. And there's some Black, Hispanic, and Caucasian. I only have 1 Caucasian student. And this is the data from NWEA from fall and winter. So if you notice, there is an increase in the advanced students from fall to winter, but the number of students in the low level remained the same. So there's also an increase in the number of students in the low average. Oh, no, decrease in the low average and increase in the average. But yeah, we're still working on that few students in the low level. So this is how I use assessment, or this is my daily routine. So Monday to Friday, I say Monday to Friday because Thursday, because Friday is shortened period. So we only have like 40 minutes. So it's a different routine. So from Monday to Thursday, we do, well, we do now, as always, but it's in Desmos. We do the do now in Desmos. And then most of the activities are collaborative. It's usually pair work or small group activity. And then when we're done building the knowledge, the skill, we will practice using the assessments. And as similar with Brandon, while they are on the assessment, they do it pair or small group. They have that liberty to choose whether they wanted to work with a partner, work with their small group, or work alone. In the beginning, a lot of them chose to work alone, but moving forward, they are now all collaborating. And yeah, similar with Brandon, while they are working on that, my assessment report is open so that I can check which questions are needs support. I would remind them on this question, you need to remember, but most of the time they remind each other. So I'm talking about going deep with mathematics. So there are ways that I support this through error analysis. We do error analysis before we start assessment. We also do circling the sage, but I will focus on the peer-to-peer support. And this is part of the peer-to-peer support. This is an intentional seating chart. The blues are the advanced students, yellows are average, orange are low average, and red are low level students. So here you will notice that all the small groups has at least one blue student because I intentionally put someone who can help support the group if I am not available, or because I have a teacher assistant in the classroom. If he or I is not available, there is someone in the group that is able to support. Now, this seating arrangement or intentional seating chart is made possible by the assessment reports. So I check on that and I check on the NWEA too. But although unlike Brandon, I don't change daily because I have 102 students. I change them bi-weekly. But if like the seating chart for these 2 weeks is working really well, then I would extend it a little more. So this is how it looks like. Well, these pictures came from one of the days we're doing the assessment. So if you notice the upper right, this student was standing, the other student is standing, and he is showing a paper to the girl with a Chromebook in front of her because they were arguing with about one problem. So yeah, that was settled. And this two on the upper left, there are two students standing because their group is done. So they decided to go around and see who else will need help. So that's them helping other classmates. And this is the pictures at the bottom. They're helping, like the advanced students are helping the other students. And just to clarify, it's not just the advanced students who are helping. Like there are instances that the app, because they will still have confusion. And like just earlier this morning, one advanced student was asking for a help from a student who needs more support, and she was able to help the more advanced student, and I'm very happy to see that. Okay, so I tried my best to record a conversation between students during peer-to-peer support, but once they see my recorder, they start talking to me in the recording. So I just scrapped that and just put in the transcript here. So A is the student who needs more support, while G is the student who is more advanced. So it started with A asking if can you assist without giving me the answers, because some of them just like, but it rarely happens this period of time. But in the beginning, they are just like, oh, do you need help? These are my answers. You can just copy it. So right now it still happens, but not as much as when we were starting. So here, the advanced student is supporting student A, by asking him questions. So just like this. Okay, how did you get this? What's your thought process? And then he explained, A explained what he did, and then G just supported him by telling him that you can also do that in this problem. But there is the given is different. This is when they were working with, I think, volume of cone. So I don't have my base area here. But then G asked, but can you find the base area using what is given? And he said, yes, because I have radius and height. But it took a while before he realizes that he can do that. And then, so if you notice, the more advanced student did not really give him any answer. He was just guiding him through questions. And that is having more than 50% in the class who are on grade level or advanced. I think that's one thing I could help them go deep in math, is to think about what questions to ask to go deep with these questions. Like, it's not me directly teaching. It's not, it's not me directly teaching. It is the students who are transferring their knowledge to other students. Okay, so the results are, as I mentioned earlier, it wasn't an easy sale. In the beginning, the students will not work with each other because since majority of them are already on grade level, they feel like they would rather work alone. But as I kept reminding them, work together, make sure you are helping someone who needs help. So they were more open to helping each other and asking for help, because some of them will not just be quiet there. You would just notice them not working because they don't know. They will not ask for help. But that changed a lot if you compare from the beginning to today. It has changed significantly. Like today, if you see one group that is done, they would, just like when the picture I showed you, they would go around the classroom and ask who still needs help. They would not just sit there and do nothing. Another great result is the feedback. So whenever they get a problem wrong, they would not stop on that. They would ask, you would just be surprised. Someone would say, oh, where did I go wrong? They are frustrated. Where did I go wrong? What did I do wrong? And then someone will come along. I don't have to approach them, but I still listen to their conversation, of course, to check whether they are on the right track. Someone will come, okay, let me see your answer. What did you do here? And then they will figure it out on their own. But sometimes I still need to intervene. There will be problems that they would ask me. So that is how I support equity in classroom. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Maria. I'll go ahead and give folks just another chance to share any questions in the chat before we get to the Q&A portion. And in the meantime, I just want to spotlight a few of our Teacher Corner resources. And I meant to do this also right after Brandon's presentation, but just want to spotlight a few user resource or teacher created resources in our Teacher Corner that sort of align with some of the themes that are coming up in Brandon's and Maria's presentations. And so if you go to the Teacher Corner, you can go to and notice that I just click Teacher Corner up here, and you go to Classroom Artifacts. We have a whole bunch of different artifacts from teacher users of ASSISTments that can help you to support these equitable practices in your classroom. So for example, I'm going to go down here to Marla Edwards. So Marla has a video just showing what student collaboration looks like in her classroom, if you want another example for inspiration. You can also feel free to check out our Breakout Room in a Box resource created by Donna Lee Tigner. And so if you're trying to get students into that productive math discourse where students of all levels feel comfortable participating, this can be a great resource to check out. And in addition, we have a student reflection sheet created by Kim Josie, who's a 7th grade math teacher in North Carolina. And this can help students to start thinking deeply about, where they went wrong, how could they change their approach for the next problem, et cetera, to really get students to think deeply about what they're doing, how they're doing their math. All right, and we do have some questions to sort of share. So I think I'm going to start with Brandon here. For one question I have is, one of the things that you shared that I thought was really interesting was that you sort of respond to the data in real time. And so, Brandon, I was wondering, why do you prefer to respond based on that data in real time while students are working, as opposed to when everybody's finished? We know a lot of teachers might go over that data with students after the assignment is totally done. Why do you like to do it during the assignment? Oh, there may be some technical difficulties there. Maybe we lost Brandon. While we're waiting for Brandon to come back, we can go to one of the questions I had that came up for Maria. Can you share about a specific student who initially sort of struggled, but with this routine with assessments, you were able to see them engage and think more deeply and have a better experience?
That student A that I shared earlier in the transcript, because he's really one of the students I focus on. In the beginning, he would just like be really frustrated.
Mm-hmm.
If he doesn't know the answer to a problem, he would just stop and not continue. But right now, if no one is available in their group to help him, he would approach me. He would go to me, Miss Boris, I need some assistance on this because I'm struggling on this part. And he can now tell me which part he's struggling with. Because in the beginning, he would just tell me, this problem is frustrating. This is impossible to solve. But this now, like, he can identify which part of the problem is making it challenging for him.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And that's super powerful as well, because I think a lot of teachers, both present today and just in general, have that experience of, starting the year and having some students in their classes who, they want to be perfect every time, or they want to have the right answer when they speak or when they're answering a problem. And when that doesn't happen, they get frustrated. And so having these routines for, where students understand who they can go to and ask for help, and having a routine in place for the helpers to know not just to give answers, but to be asking these kinds of probing questions, can help to sort of ease the anxiety that those students might feel when they don't immediately have the right answer right from the jump. And it looks like we have Brandon back with us. So Brandon, I'll just repeat that question. Why do you prefer to respond based on real-time data while students are working instead of waiting until everybody's done?
Because I use the modern classrooms approach, all my scholars are working on different things at different times. So I keep all of their data up in real time so that I can go and check in on them before they move to the next thing. What I don't want to have happen is somebody on lesson 12 think they're ready for 13 and they move ahead when they've made some sort of conceptual mistake that's going to prohibit them from being successful moving forward. So I just try to catch them as quickly as I can.
And we often know how difficult it is for teachers to really have that in the moment pulse on how students are doing so that they can react in a super timely manner. Assessments reports are live updating, so you can use those to really go and nip any issues in the bud if students are frustrated or struggling. And it sounds like that also prevents class time from getting wasted, where they might otherwise just kind of sit there and be frustrated and stew on their thoughts, right?
Exactly.
Excellent. So thank you both so much for sharing. Just for the purpose of time, we're going to go ahead and sort of move on. And I would love for folks, you can either share in the chat or share aloud. Again, like our last question, we appreciate anybody who's willing to share aloud. If you don't want to do that, you can share in the chat. Based on today's presentations, what's one high leverage next step you plan on taking in your classroom to ensure equity for all students? So something you heard today, a way that you were inspired, something that you want to try with your students to generate more equity in your classroom. And we'd love to hear what you have to share. All right. Well, while we're waiting for a few more responses, potentially, something that really jumped out to me as I was listening to Brandon and Maria speak, there are really two sort of things there. And one is making sure that, your students who are always on top of things, that they have a basic protocol that they can leverage to help students that might be experiencing more of a challenge. Oftentimes, without that kind of guidance, those students who've already mastered the content might just start sharing answers or things like that. And you want to make sure to leverage students that have that higher level of knowledge to support students that might need more support. So whether it's what Maria described with making sure that you're asking questions when a student is challenged and needs help, or if you're talking about getting students familiar with the process of dialogue before they dive into content-based problems, both of those can be effective strategies. Lee shared that he wants to view and share the video resource for the practice guide. Oh, and also our resource for affirming mathematics learners' identities and strategies to foster a growth mindset. So some things that are in our teacher corner that I shared. Absolutely. All right. So moving right along, we're going to go ahead and, we do have one more. Mary Beth shared teaching more language strategies to inspire peer-to-peer support, so more pointed questions. Absolutely. Students may not know what useful positive math discourse sounds like. So you want to intentionally teach those strategies, teach them the language that they can use to have those conversations before you expect them to have them effectively. Very good point, Mary Beth. Thank you. And so we spent time today just to recap our topics. We talked about what equity is. We heard from our featured teacher presenters, did some Q&A there. I would love it if you could just take a minute, and I already posted it in the chat, but I'll post it again. Take about 30 to 60 seconds just to complete our feedback survey. We do value all of the feedback we get from our ASSISTments teachers and webinar attendees, and we use that feedback to guide how we shape and change our offerings over time. So we do very much appreciate you sharing your feedback today. You can also check out our webinar library. And again, you'll get a copy of this deck with the active link, but I'm also going to go ahead and grab that and put it in the chat. One second. And we have our new user webinar recordings there, as well as our 30-minute deep dive sessions on specific topics and targeted webinar recordings like these. So definitely a wealth of information available in our webinar library. In addition, you can visit our website for more resources. And so when I'm on the ASSISTments website, I can access a variety of helpful user resources right here by clicking Help Center and going to User Resources. And so we have our user resources organized according to different topics. One of the resources that came up or that appears in our guide, our equity guide for ASSISTments teachers, is using the tutorial on answering open response questions. So help students understand how those work and have a routine in place to generate the highest quality open responses from students. Some other resources you can check out include Getting Started, where you can see 5 tips for getting started with students, which focus on building that positive and productive mindset around assessments before you dive into challenging coursework. So we do have a variety of user resources that you can find useful in your experience as you're working in assessments. All right. Please feel free to stay in touch and definitely reach out to us at contact@assistments.org if you have any questions. We have a super active Facebook user community, and we always welcome more teachers who want to join us there. I'm also just going to go ahead and share the direct link to our user resources in the chat, just in case you're interested in checking those out more. And again, I want to thank our presenters today for joining us. I know classroom teachers are super busy and have a lot to think about, in terms of their jobs, but also have personal lives. And so I really just want to give a huge shout out to Brandon and Maria for being willing to join us today and share their perspectives on how they support a more equitable classroom environment with assessments. And also want to share appreciation for all of our attendees today, taking time out of your day to hopefully be inspired with some potential steps that you can take in your classrooms to make it that much more equitable for the students that you serve. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar. But again, I do appreciate y'all for joining us, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.